Some betrayals don't come with violence. They come quietly, wrapped in love, sealed with silence, and carried for years. Julian Ashcroft was the kind of man people trusted without question, a respected architect, a devoted husband, a man who built homes for others while quietly letting his own fall apart. To the world, he was solid, unshakable. To Mara Ellington, he was the man who once promised never to lie. They met at a gallery opening neither of them wanted to attend. Mara stood before a painting of a house collapsing into the sea, her wine glass forgotten in her hand. Julian noticed the way she tilted her head, as if listening to something the rest of the room couldn't hear. "It's beautiful," he said, stepping beside her. "It's dying," she corrected, not looking at him. "There's a difference." He smiled. "I build things, you see them fall apart. We'd make terrible partners." She turned then, finally, and her eyes were the color of storms, or perfect ones. That night they talked until the gallery closed, until the city quieted, until the only sound between them was the truth they hadn't yet learned to fear. Their love was gentle at first, patient, certain, the kind of love that feels eternal because it has never been tested. They married in autumn, beneath trees that had already begun to let go. Julian built her a house on a hillside, wide windows that framed the sky, rooms designed for laughter they hadn't yet earned. He drew the blueprints while she slept, sketching a future he believed he could control. "Promise me something," Mara whispered one night, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "Anything. Never lie to me, not even to protect me." He kissed her forehead. Never. It was the only promise he would break. It started with a phone call Julian didn't take, then another, then a letter he burned before Mara could see it. The truth was this: 7 years into their marriage, Julian discovered that Mara's mother, estranged, absent, the ghost Mara rarely spoke of, was dying. She had reached out, desperate to reconcile before the end. But Julian had met Mara's mother once, years before. He had seen the cruelty in her eyes, the manipulation in her smile. He had watched Mara rebuild herself from the ruins of that woman's love. So he made a choice. He told himself it was mercy, that some doors should stay closed, that Mara had finally found peace, and he would not let the past drag her back into the dark. He intercepted every letter, every message, every attempt at contact. He carried the secret like a stone in his chest, growing heavier with each passing day. 6 months later, Mara's mother died alone. Julian attended the funeral in secret, stood in the back, left before anyone could recognize him. He told himself he had saved her. He told himself it was love. The truth came 3 years later, delivered by a lawyer handling the estate. Mara opened the door to find a stranger with a manila envelope and a question: "Why didn't you come?" She didn't understand, not at first. Then the lawyer explained. The letters, the calls, the hospital visits that never happened, the mother who had asked for her daughter every day until her voice gave out. "I don't understand," Mara whispered. "I never received." But even as she said it, she knew. She turned and found Julian standing in the doorway, his face drained of color, his hands trembling at his sides. "Mara." "How long?" Silence. "How long, Julian?" 3 years. His voice cracked. "I thought I was trying to protect you. She hurt you so badly, and I couldn't." "You decided." Mara's voice was eerily calm, each word carved from ice. "You decided what I could handle, what I deserved to know. You took my choice away." "She would have destroyed you." "She was my mother." The words tore out of her, jagged and bleeding. "I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to forgive her, or hate her, or anything. You stole that from me." Julian reached for her. She stepped back as if his touch would burn. "I loved you," he said, and it sounded like a confession.
"You played God," she replied, "and you did it in silence." That night, Mara packed a single suitcase. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't ask him to explain again, because she finally understood. The man she married was capable of loving her and destroying her in the same breath. "I need you to know something," she said at the door, her hand on the knob, her back to him. "I would have forgiven her, or I wouldn't have, but it would have been my choice. You didn't protect me, Julian. You erased me." She left. Julian stood in the house he built for her, the wide windows, the rooms designed for laughter, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be hollow. 5 years passed like a held breath. Julian threw himself into his work, designing buildings with structural integrity he could no longer find in himself. He won awards. He gave speeches about the importance of foundation, of trust in architecture. He never signed the divorce papers Mara sent. She never asked why. Mara moved to a coastal town where no one knew her story. She taught art to children who still believed in second chances. She dated, briefly, a kind man who never asked about the ring she no longer wore but still carried in her pocket. She built a life from the rubble. But some ruins are permanent. It came on a Tuesday, just after dawn. "Is this Mara Ellington?" "Yes. I'm calling from Mercy General. Julian Ashcroft has been admitted. He listed you as his emergency contact. He's asking for you." Her hands went numb. What happened? "An accident on a construction site. He's stable, but—" A pause. "He's asking for you." She should have said no, should have hung up, should have let him face this alone, the way she had faced her mother's death. Instead, she said, "I'll be there in 3 hours."
Julian's recovery was slow, painful. Mara visited twice a week, at first out of obligation, then out of something she couldn't name. They spoke carefully, like diplomats navigating a minefield. They talked about his injuries, her students, the weather. They never talked about them, until one evening when the sun was setting through his hospital window, painting everything gold and forgiving. "I kept the house," Julian said quietly. Mara looked up from the book she'd been pretending to read. "What?" "The house I built for you. I couldn't sell it, couldn't change it. I kept it exactly the way it was the night you left. Your coffee mug is still on the counter. Your books are still on the shelves. I walk through it every day like a ghost haunting his own life." "Julian!" "Let me finish." He turned his head to look at her fully. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. I took something from you that I can never give back. But I need you to know, every single day since you left, I've had to live with what I did. And it's been the most honest thing I've ever done, facing what I destroyed, who I became." Mara felt tears slide down her face. "I wanted to hate you." "You should." "I tried. God, I tried so hard. But then I'd remember the way you used to wake me up by drawing constellations on my back, or how you'd leave me notes in the margins of my books, or the way you believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, and I'd hate you even more, because how could someone capable of that kind of love also be capable of that kind of betrayal?" "I don't have an answer," Julian said, "except that I was a coward, and I'm sorry. I will be sorry for the rest of my life." They sat in silence as the sun slipped below the horizon. "I went to her grave," Mara said finally, "after I found out. I stood there for 3 hours trying to figure out what to say, what to feel, and you know what I realized?" Julian waited. "I realized that forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about refusing to let the hurt define the rest of your life." She looked at him then, her eyes clear and devastatingly sad. "I forgive you, Julian. Not because you deserve it, not because what you did was small, but because I deserve to stop carrying this." Julian's face crumpled. "Julian!" "But forgiveness doesn't mean going back." She stood, gathering her things. "Some things, once broken, can't be rebuilt the same way. You taught me that. You're an architect. You know that sometimes the foundation is too damaged, and the kindest thing you can do is walk away." "I know," he wiped his eyes, "but thank you for coming, for staying, for—" his voice fractured, "for loving me once." "I still do," Mara said softly. "That's the tragedy. I still do." 6 months later, Julian stood in front of the house on the hillside. He had finally listed it for sale, had finally packed away her coffee mug, her books, the ghost of their life together, had finally signed the divorce papers, had finally let her go. Mara received the documents with her signature space empty. She stared at them for a long time before signing. Some loves don't end with reconciliation. Some loves end with two people choosing to honor what they had by refusing to destroy each other further. Years later, Mara would receive a package with no return address. Inside, blueprints for a small house by the sea, wide windows, rooms designed for solitude and peace, a note in Julian's handwriting. "For the woman who taught me that some things should fall apart so better things can be built. Thank you for showing me that love isn't about holding on, it's about knowing when to let go. I hope you build something beautiful." She would frame the blueprints. She would never build the house, but she would finally let herself remember their love not as a betrayal, but as the thing that taught her she was strong enough to survive being broken. And Julian, in his own rebuilt life, would carry her forgiveness like a light in his chest, not as absolution,
but as proof that even in his worst moment, he had been loved by someone brave enough to set them both free. Some betrayals can't be undone, but some loves are big enough to survive their own ending. And in the space between forgiveness and goodbye, two people learned what it meant to love someone enough to let the story end, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. Because that's what love does. It stays even after it leaves.